As Claire said, my name is Helen Cooke and I'm the CEO and founder of MyPlus. And today is all about disability and employment, and it's going to get you, the aim is to get you thinking about what it is you want to do and how you're going to achieve it. Now, I'm going to use the word disability as a catch-all phrase for a whole host of conditions, everything from dyslexia, dyspraxia, Asperger's syndrome, cerebral palsy, cancer, OCD, heart disease, chronic pain, and a million and one that I haven't mentioned. There's far too many of me to mention, but I just want to say that this really is an all-encompassing term, and that's what we're talking about today, the disability in the broadest sense. Now, some people think that having a disability will hold you back, and particularly in terms of your education, and particularly in terms of your career, but I tend to think that that's a whole load of rubbish. I believe that if you want to do something, you can do it. There might be challenges, however, it's all about finding your way around those challenges and finding out how you're going to do things. And I want to start by showing you the Paralympic video from 2016, which I'm sure you will have seen before. But as you watch this, I want you to notice the things that people have found a way to do when perhaps people thought they couldn't. And I'm talking about the people who are playing the drums or the piano with their feet, or playing sport in a wheelchair, picking up your baby when you don't have any arms, tap dancing with just like one leg, or driving a sports car when you don't have any hands. So, as I said, as you watch this, just look at the ways that people have found things, the way that they can do things, because they really wanted to do it.
Yes, I can, suddenly, yes, I can. Gee, I'm afraid to go on has turned into, yes, I can. Take a look, what do you see? 133 pounds of confidence, me. Got the feeling I can do anything, yes, I can. Something that sings in my blood is telling me, yes, I can. I was just born today, I can go all the way, yes, I can. 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 Hey, yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can! Are you ready? I can climb Everest. Yes, I can. I can fight here all night and never rest. Yes, I can. I was just born today. I can go all the way. Yes, I can.
So, did you spot me? I'd love to tell you I was the person at the very end in that, going down the ramp, but no, I wasn't. I was the person wheeling into the boardroom. You just saw the back of my head for a nano of a second. So I'm a wheelchair user. So why am I talking about disability? I'm a wheelchair user. I had what's called a spinal tumour when I was a baby, when I was a few months old, and it left me paralysed just below the waist. So I've never walked, and I use a wheelchair at all times. And I guess I grew up having a disability at a time when it wasn't really talked about. Disability wasn't discussed, it wasn't openly acknowledged. Children my age were sent away to a school or to an institution, and people had very low expectations of individuals with a disability, or indeed no expectations, particularly in terms of what they would achieve in the way of an education or a career. But my parents weren't going to let that happen. I'm in the middle of three girls, I've got two sisters, and they were determined that anything that my sisters did, that I was going to be able to do too. Particularly, my mother was a teacher. She was very keen for me to ensure that I got a good education. And I did the 12 plus. At the time we lived in Buckinghamshire, I did the 12 plus, and I passed my 12 plus, but the county said, I'm sorry, we don't have a school that's accessible for you. And with that, my mum went into battle through the county courts, and ultimately I did get my high school placed. I went to Chesham High School, which is now Chesham Grammar, and they put a lift into the school to ensure that I could get to all the classes and get all the lessons. And I got fully involved in school. It never crossed my mind that I wouldn't get involved in the sport that we did, the movement and dance, the school productions, the school trips, anything that was going on, I went along to, and I made it happen. I think probably the only thing I really worked out I couldn't do was hockey. Hockey on a muddy field in a wheelchair just doesn't work. So after I did my A-levels, I took a year out and I worked initially here in the UK, and then I went to Australia via Singapore and came back via Canada. And then I went up to university, and I went to Hull, which was about 4 hours away from home. So I drove up, I moved away from home. Again, we ensured that the accommodation was accessible, and I lived in halls of residence. And again, I got fully involved in university life. So what did I get involved in? Well, as well as the social life, and enjoyed the bars and the clubs, I coxed the men's rowing team. I got involved in a business society, became president of our business society at Hull. I got involved in the organisation of our graduate ball. I got involved in Rag Week, charity activities. And the reason I talk about this, and the reason I talk about not just what I got involved with at university, but also school, is that this is all about developing your employability skills. And that's really, really important when it comes to getting a job. Employers look for a lot more than somebody that's just got good academics. They need people that have developed their leadership skills, that have developed their confidence, that can take on positions of responsibility, that can take the initiative. And you only learn to do that by getting involved in things, rather than thinking that actually I just need to get a first class degree, or I need to get these stars in my GCSEs or A-levels. That's important, but if that's all you've got, that's not going to help you when the time comes to apply for a job. So when I graduated, I wanted to work for a large company. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I wanted to take on go on a graduate management training program. And I applied to a lot of companies, and I ended up being accepted by Marks and Spencer on their graduate training program. And at the time, they were one of the top 3 graduate recruiters in the UK. And I stayed with Marks and Spencer for 3.5 years. And then I left there and I joined Mars and that wonderful world of chocolate, originally in a sales role. And then I moved into HR and recruitment, and I guess developed the skills that enabled me to set up my business 15 years ago. And when it comes to employment, I will never know what part my being in a wheelchair had in terms of being offered a job. But what I do know is that I wouldn't have survived in either of those 2 companies, which were very tough and very demanding, if I wasn't up for the job, if they'd lowered their standards. But I don't think they did lower their standards, because as I said, I've done a lot, I've got involved in a lot, and I had a lot to talk about, and a lot about me, I guess, when it came to that interview process. But it hasn't just all been about education and employment. On the way, I have done a lot of sailing. I have scuba dived, I swim, I can drive, and my big passion when I'm allowed is skiing. And I thought, again, I'd just show you another video, which is of me skiing. People often say, how on earth do you do that? So I thought I would just show how that works. Here we go. So this is me skiing in Canada a couple of years ago, just if you wonder how somebody in a sit ski skis. So for basically all you skiers out there, the way that I ski is the same as you do, but I'm just doing it strapped into a bucket seat, whereas you do it strapped very tight into your boots. But I just thought I'd share that with you. So going back to the video, I don't believe that disabled people are superhuman, and I certainly don't believe that I'm superhuman. And I don't believe that I'm any more special than anyone else just because I have a disability. But I do believe that my disability has given me something extra, and it's given me a plus. And those are the skills and the strengths and the abilities that I've had to develop to manage my disability on a day-to-day basis in a world that's not always geared up for it. And I'm talking about determination to overcome the barriers in front of me. I'm talking about problem solving to get around the daily challenges and obstacles, such as a lack of access or lifts not working. And I've had to develop my interpersonal skills and my communication skills in order to build relationships with others, and particularly when I need people to do things for me because I can't do it myself. And that's when I said to you at the beginning, when we talk about disability, often people think about the things that people can't do or their lack of ability. And I think it's the opposite. I think that we develop unique skills and strengths, and these are going to be an asset in the workplace. So what do I actually mean by this? Well, let me just give you a couple of examples. So I live in Windsor, and I like to go out and wheel for fitness. I was training to do the London Marathon before COVID happened. One of the places I like to wheel is in the Great Park. But where I live, near to the Great Park, there isn't any accessible parking. So it wasn't easy where the parking was. It was very gravelly, it was very dirty for me to get my wheelchair out. And because it wasn't an extra wide accessible bay, people could also come along and park very close to me, which means that I could get back to my car and not be able to get in it because I can't get my wheelchair between the two cars. So I wrote to the Great Park and said what this problem was, and they sort of said, well, I'm sorry, we can't do anything about it. If you want to wheel, you can go elsewhere in the Great Park where they have got accessible parking. And I said, well, that's half an hour from me. I don't want to be driving for half an hour just for a wheel. And long story short, between the conversations that we had, they agreed that I could have a parking permit to actually park in the Great Park. And that's the type of challenge that I talk about on a day-to-day basis, just something simple as being able to park when I want to go for a wheel. But in terms of that, there was my determination that I was going to get what I wanted. There was my influencing, my interpersonal skills, and actually solving the problems I had, which was I couldn't park where I wanted to park. And that's what I talk about when we talk about MyPlus, is really thinking about those skills and strengths that you've developed. And these are absolutely, when we talk about determination, problem solving, interpersonal skills, are the types of skills that an employer is looking for. But even if we've identified our skills, I think we still have to recognize that finding a job is hard. But finding a job is hard for anyone. And people get rejected. And it's not because of your disability. It's simply because there's somebody who's more suited to the role than you are. However, it can be more challenging to find a job when you have a disability. And there are key challenges such as disclosure. Should I disclose my disability to an employer, and how do I do that? What about the support and adjustments I need? I might need extra time during an assessment centre, during the interview. I might need documents in a different size font. And actually, how do I account for the differences in my CV? How do I account for that time that I had to take out of education because I wasn't well, or because I was coming to learning to manage my disability? What about lower grades? What if my grades were affected by the late diagnosis of dyslexia or my period of poor mental health? How do I tell an employer about those? Well, what we've done at MyPlus is we've developed the Students Club website, which provides you with loads and loads of free careers advice addressing these types of issues. So actually you can go here and find all the advice and guidance that you need in terms of how do I disclose a disability, how do I request support, how do I account for my lower grades or whatever else it is. So on the website, we have a fantastic advice and resources section, and we've got lots of ebooks on here, which are all free to download. You can see the ones here are about being open, disclosing your disability. We've also got them about communicating your strengths, and that's about positively positioning your disability. We've got them about standing out for the right reasons, accounting for those differences, and also about asking for adjustments in the recruitment process. And although this sounds very recruitment and employment focused, this is all going to be really useful when you're applying to college or applying to university, applying for a part-time job. It's all relevant for all of that. All this information is there for you. We also work with over 40, what I would call disability confident employers who recognise the skills and strengths that those with a disability have. And you can just see some of the big companies on here. And all of these companies have a profile on our website talking about why they value disability, how they recognise those strengths, and they also advertise their opportunities and their jobs and their careers jobs with us. So again, for those of you that are a bit further on in your career, also your education, you might want to check that out. We also have lots and lots of case studies and stories and blogs. It's all very well me telling you it's not that hard to go out there with your disability and get a job, but let's hear from people that have actually done that. So just a few of the stories that we've got here. Bam works for Linklaters, which is one of the top 5 global law firms in the world. She has dyslexia. I met Will when he was working for Enterprise, and he's got obsessive compulsive disorder. And Ricky has a stammer. And then we've also got Jessica at KPMG, who has anxiety and depression, Nicholas, who's deaf, Rachel, who has epilepsy, and James, who has cerebral palsy, all enjoying their career with really great employers. And I think that their blogs, their stories, their case studies are absolute testament to the fact that disability doesn't stop you doing anything, but it's about finding a way to do it and overcoming those challenges. And as well as the case studies, we've got lots of blogs, lots of useful information actually about how do you get involved in sport, how do you join clubs and societies. One of my favourite was from a student who had a hearing impairment who went to China for her work experience with the British Council. And she said what was challenging for her at the time, because this was a few years ago, was she lip reads, and she couldn't do that because people were wearing masks. Now, of course, everybody's wearing masks at the moment, and we're having to find a way around that. But at the time, it was quite a challenge for her. But she still did it, and she still went. And we also run a lot of events. Similar to today's webinar, we run events. We've got one on Thursday for those that are interested in a career in law. We run them with our employers. And equally, sometimes our employers run them, dare I say it, without us. And it's all about ensuring that they are inclusive of individuals with a disability and letting you know that they welcome your application and how to access the support that you may need to get through that recruitment process. So I realise I've talked quite a lot. We started off by me saying that I didn't believe a disability stopped you doing anything, and we watched the Paralympic video. And then I've told you a bit about my journey and how I've ended up doing what I'm doing, and then talked about the Students Club and all the resources that we have here. But in terms of going forward, just a few top tips from me is what's really, really important is that you start to develop your employability skills. As I said earlier, employers want more than just good academics. They want a rounded individual. And to achieve that, you've got to throw yourself into all the opportunities that your school, your college, or your university offers to you. You need to become an expert in your disability and what you require. You need to really become an expert in what it means particularly in the adjustments and support you're going to need, whether that's in school, in college, or when it's going into employment, so that you can have a conversation and ensure that you get what you require. And finally, what I would say to you is that when it comes to sharing information about your disability, work out what it is you're going to share and how you're going to do that. It's not always easy. We don't know, what we should say and what we shouldn't say. And I always say, just say what's relevant. You don't need to go into all the ins and outs of why, of your dyslexia or your depression or whatever it is. What you need to just say is, this is my dyslexia. I need extra time because it allows me to do X, Y, and Z. But really think about what it is you're going to say, because then sharing that information becomes an awful lot easier. And there's lots and lots of information on the Students Club website about just that, and particularly in our ebooks. So that was all I was going to share with you. Do check out the Students Club website. And there's two things that I would say. Is first of all, as I said at the beginning, when it comes to employment, it's not going to be easy, but then it's not easy for everyone. But you can make it easier for yourself by setting out on your journey now, and that's about developing your employability skills. I would really urge you to register for the Students Club website. It's absolutely free, and start taking advantage of all the resources that are on there. And when we finish this webinar today, what I would ask you to think about is, what one thing are you going to go away and do? What are you going to do that's about either developing your skills or identifying your plus, or working out what information you're going to share with an employer?